heard it click, right? Nevertheless, in this passage, 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 10 through 17, he calls for them to speak with a unified voice. Hey, listen, guys, I understand there may be varying opinions on certain things, but the reality is we need to speak in one voice to the community. The community loves it when we fight. The community loves it when we disagree. They love to hear gossip. They love to hear these things, and they disparage the churches when they do that. Listen, let me tell you something. We need to have a unified voice, and that unified voice and message has to be around Jesus Christ. And that's what Paul is saying. You see, he demands they put aside their divisions and come together. Notice he says later, but that you be perfectly or completely joined together in the same mind and in the same judgment. The fact is, he desires that both heart and mind be as one, instead of forming divisions and split chapters or whatever. Please. Have you ever heard of those things? So created court means believers putting aside selfishness and working together. Most of the time when a group gets together, it's over someone who has a different opinion, generally about the pastor, but sometimes about the church itself, and tries to draw people away into their own way of thinking. Look, let me tell you something. Believers need discernment. You need to use discernment about what is important doctrinally and what is not. Let me say something here. There are some things that are somewhat in a gray area from our perspective. We don't know everything about what God intended or what Paul intended in every single passage that there is. And so in some cases, there is room to allow others to have just a little space, okay? But in the main, we need to be finding out what God's Word says and what is intended from that context and pursuing that. And we need to be aware that sometimes people take and twist that just a little bit and do it for their own selfish agenda. They do it for their own personal agenda. So bringing a court will take some overlooking and seeing everyone is important, even if there's disagreement. Let me tell you something from my own background that I remember. I was meeting with a bunch of young men my age. You can never imagine me being young, but I was. And there was a doctrinal issue that I just really missed. And I was expressing what I'd been taught years before. And they were gentle and kind enough to allow me to run that course and slowly correct me without challenging me. And that's what we need to do. Sometimes people just make mistakes or misunderstand or have been taught wrong things. And it takes time for those things to unravel. You don't get it over by somebody coming and saying, that's wrong. So we need to allow someone some time to learn. And the fact of the matter is, they overlook that and still fellowship with me. And we need to do that and try to, at the same time, give them the ability to discern what is true and what is not. The fact of the matter is, it takes a change in attitude towards others. We can be critical, thinking they're charging and addressing me, or we can think, you know what, I can be a blessing to them and encourage them gently to do those things that they need to do. So we need to change our attitude, not judge our differences. The problem with polarization is when one says this is so, one says this is not so, and they attack each other personally. The fact of the matter is, Paul is saying, don't let this progress. The second thing that I know, not only should we understand that we need unity, when a congregation falls to that kind of division, it causes disarray. It causes disarray, and when these personalities, when these thought processes overrule what God is trying to say. The Old Testament tells the story of Rehoboam. You know who Rehoboam was? He was the son of Solomon. There was Saul, the first king. There was David, God's king. Then there was Solomon, the great king. And then there is Rehoboam. Rehoboam was an interesting fellow. He was named king actually before his father died, but he became the sole king at the death of his father. And as he was going along, as he was moving along, they went to mourn Solomon's death, and they crowned him king at the same time. And for a while, the people came up, the leaders of the nation came up to him and said, Rehoboam, listen, your dad put taxes on us and burdens on us and things that we just couldn't bear. So if you'll lift some of those up, if you'll cut taxes, you ever hear that one? You'll cut taxes and allow the burdens to be eased, we will serve you, and you can serve us as king, and we'll be loyal to you. So Rehoboam said, give me 3 days. Rehoboam went to the counselors of his father and asked their advice. And as they asked that advice, as they proceeded down that road, the advisors of Solomon told him, do as they suggest. Ease the burdens. Lift the taxes. Do what they say, and they'll serve you willingly. Well, Rehoboam didn't like that. So he went to a group of younger advisors, and they said, you know what? You need to go back and tell them that you're going to increase the burdens on the people, and that you're going to do it so much that what your father did will seem light in comparison. He actually used an anatomical figure that I'll not go into. So anyway, as they went back and they told the people about that, of course, what happened was they rebelled. And the 10 tribes of the north followed a man by the name of Jeroboam. Now, that was a big mistake on his part. That was really not right. Well, I mean, God was doing it, but he did some things that were wrong. But they split away, they divided themselves into 2 nations and 2 kings and even two places of worship. Actually, the northern kingdom had 2, and the southern kingdom still maintained the temple. The fact of the matter is, they were weakened by an ambitious man and his other leaders who had their own agenda and not God's. And the fact of the matter is, they never consulted with God or sought what's best for the nation as a whole. And so, the same way, when people of a congregation start pursuing their personal goals, they will divide and they will become contentious as they have here. You see, that's what Paul is warning about. If we argue, if there's a struggle, listen, let me tell you something. It causes great harm. Paul points to their segregating into groups centered on a perceived difference that was really man-made. They chose to follow Paul because they liked the way Paul did it. Now, he goes on to talk about whether or not he baptized people. Let's understand that passage, that portion there. I want to do a little bit of exegesis for you here. Number one, some people suggest that meant Paul quit baptizing. Not at all. Paul, you remember, was the one that wrote in Romans that baptism is an identity and an attachment to Christ's death by a symbolic death of the believer. It's a testimony as what? We just had a time of baptism, and the fact of the matter is, it is the old man standing there being buried in Christ and raised in newness of life. He wasn't saying, let's quit baptizing. He's saying, I'm glad I didn't baptize more than a few of you because you guys would have been crazy and would have thought it was important for me to be baptizing you. It's not about the person who baptizes, because a church is doing the baptism in terms of authority. It is a person who is performing it, but he has not got the authority. He doesn't have the authority outside of the church. That's why bring someone who's come to Christ or has been saved and never been baptized, we bring them before the church. Well, we vote on it. Not because we want to vote on everything, changing light bulbs, etc. It's because we want to be sure that in that case, the baptismal authority comes from the local church. And so Paul is showing their groups following men. Now, you'd think, well, what about the one with Christ? Well, the fact of the matter is they didn't know Christ personally in terms of physical knowledge. And so they really were just going on an idea of how they thought, and whoever that leader was. He said, shall the group follow men who did not, and he did not desire to let them be isolated that way. He asked they examine who they were following, with most sinners saved by grace. He said, listen, me and Peter and Apollos, we're all ministers of God, but we're sinners. Did I die for you? Did Apollos? Were these guys doing these things for you? No, only Jesus did, and we need to follow him. And of course, he talks about all of these things, but what he wants us to do is beware of following people. I know that there are some folks that follow preachers. They'll even mimic them. You ever heard of that? It's not quite as prevalent today as I've seen in other times, but it might come back. It's something that comes and goes. But it's not about people. It's about the leadership of the Spirit, and it's about, especially when we talk about conflict, only when there's obvious heresy or countering against the Scriptures should we confront people, and not about mistakes. And if we do confront them, we need to start gently and quiet. So we need to be cautious about people who are trying to resist the leaders God has put in place. Now, I've been in churches where they've resisted pastors. I've been in churches where they wanted to resist what God was doing. We need to be aware of that. If it's violating Scripture, we don't need to go. We don't need to do it. The fact of the matter is, we need to take care to avoid people who do these things under the table instead of acting openly. I've had people have a business meeting at their house, then have a business meeting that next night at the church. They had their own agenda instead of the agenda that the church had set aside. We need to be aware and avoid that. That's wrong. That's improper, incorrect. We need to depend upon the Word and the Spirit to guide us, not emotions and the urgings of others. So instead, what does he suggest? Well, he suggests congregations need to focus on sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ. Listen, if we're sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ, we don't have time for the other things. And the other places are minimalized. You remember how Peter was when Jesus was crucified? You remember that story? You remember that Peter went along with them as they went through the process in terms of the trials, and he was there. Jesus had already told him, "You're going to deny me 3 times." He denied the Savior 3 times in front of people that knew he was connected to him. And one time he even cursed. He used foul language. The fact of the matter is, he was ashamed of himself and ran away from the circumstances. He later tried to lead the other apostles back to their old way of living, to go fishing. If you want to find the story, it's in the book of John. But he wanted them to go back to their fishing, and the others did follow him after a long night of no fish. And if you want to around John 20. When they went and had an all-night session, which is when they fished, Jesus appeared and told Peter to cast on the right side. This is daylight. Wrong time to fish. Right side of the boat. They don't work that side. They cast the net, and it was so full they couldn't really bring it in. Peter recognized Jesus immediately. If you remember, he threw his overcoat or his cloak over himself, got into the water, and came straight over to the Lord and said, "My Lord and my God." And Jesus asked him 3 times, "Do you love me? Feed my sheep, feed my sheep, feed my lambs." He wanted Peter to lead the remaining believers, the church, and he commanded him, follow me. See, and Peter did. See, he was ready to go back fishing, but Jesus wasn't ready for him to go back fishing. He led him away to a different way, and guess what? On the day of Pentecost, before the day of Pentecost, he held the group together, they met, they prayed, and then at the day of Pentecost, thousands were saved. Later on, 5,000 were saved. Then later on, there was even more. Listen, he led the congregation there at Jerusalem to grow mightily. He opened the way for Gentiles to become the children of God by reaching out to Cornelius through a dream from God. He was instrumental in opening things up, and he was almost ready to go back fishing, but God used him. Listen, let me tell you something. We may be discouraged. We may be challenged, and maybe even some divisions amongst our hearts, although I don't think so at this point. But we need to focus on the greater good for others, and that is Jesus Christ. And lead the congregation to reach others like Peter did. We may not reach thousands, but we can reach others. And we need to focus on the greatest message about the greatest person who loved and died for us, and that is Jesus Christ. If you want unity, if you want love and harmony, listen and start focusing on sharing Christ. You got to love the people to begin with. You know, I grew up in ranching country. There were a few shepherds, sheep folk, and stuff like that, but most everybody had cattle. I mean, you go out into Jeff Davis County, and there's well over 1 million acres of land, twice or three times the size of Fremont County. There's 2,000 people. That's all. Maybe 2,500. But there's probably in the neighborhood of 50 to 100,000 head of cattle scattered over the hills. I mean, we're talking, this is old-time ranching stuff. One of the ranches, the Odd Six, takes up most of Jeff Davis County, about a third of Jeff Davis County. It goes all the way to a place called Murphyville, or Alpine. There's over 280,000 acres in that ranch. That's just one of the ranches that's there. The simple fact is this. There are a lot of things going on, and I've lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, I had to be illustration there. But Paul wanted us to focus on the message of the cross. In all these, instead of these varying personalities, the focus was the preaching of the gospel to the lost, not a focus of creating his own group. He didn't want them to look to him. As a matter of fact, he talks about that he didn't use fancy words to express the gospel unless the gospel be of none effect. He wanted to proclaim Jesus to the world simply, not letting anything interfere with its merits and its abilities. The fact is, he designed the cross to impact people in a forcefulness of its own, not clouded by the message or the messenger. You know, it's about winning people to Christ. I want you to understand we don't do that often enough. I know I don't do it often enough. I don't share enough. But the fact is, Paul is saying if you want to reunite, this is the way to do it. He said, share Christ. See, evangelism must be the focal point of the church, not leading with the philosophies of or agendas of others. So we need to pray for pastors and leaders to organize outreach and get together and work together with the folks in the church. We need to have an opportunity to reach our community. And I say today that we need to step it up. I need to step it up. But you also need to step it up. So I ask you the question, are you ready to be used in God's congregation? Then look past your fears. To be bold in sharing Christ. Don't worry about whether how things might be perceived with those around you. Reach out with loving courage. We need to realize that people need Jesus Christ more than they need our philosophies. Maybe even right philosophies. But I want you to understand the, the greatest message that you can give your neighbor, give your friends, is talking to them about their eternity. Talking to them about their end result. What are they going to do with Jesus when they come face to face with the Lord in heaven? And he says, why should I allow this person into my heaven? What exactly is your response? The only real response is, I've trusted Christ as my Savior and my Lord. And in that response, we need to tell them that Jesus does love them, whatever their response. And explain to them that while they are sinful and that's what keeps them out of heaven, Jesus has provided a way through the cross. That he died on the cross. And that we're to die to self. And we're to be buried with Christ. Like symbolic baptism. We're to be spiritually dead ourselves and to be resurrected by the power of Christ. Because of his death on the cross. His shed blood covers our sin. See, we have that message. And it needs to go outside the four walls of this room. And God wants to use you. God wants to use me. God wants to use all of us to reach to those around us. And if we're focused on what God wants, we won't have time to have these periphery divisions. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. And I'm not suggesting to you that we have divisions, but I want you to be aware that God can use you to stop these things. But we need to be focused, and the way to be unified is about reaching people for Christ. Reaching people with the message about Jesus and his death on the cross for all of us. Amen. All right. Listen, let me tell you something. If you're here today and you want to reach people for Christ, let me ask you to pray about this. We're going to sing in just a minute, but I want you to really pray about how God can use our church to reach this community. I'm aware there are some things that need to be done that have to come from me, but listen, you can share Jesus verbally. You can share Jesus daily. You can share Jesus with others around you. You can be aware of the opportunities. And let me assure you, God can use you if you'll just let him. If you'll just let him, he can use you. Okay? Let me encourage you. Get in the Word. Read some Scripture. And go find some. If you need some Scriptures to memorize, I'll give you probably one you'll want to memorize. I'll tell you where to go, how to use it, and so on. Let me just say this. Won't you step up and be counted? Just like Peter in our story. He was ready to quit. He was ready to go back fishing. He was ready to turn his back on the Savior and Lord. And just in a few weeks later, that man was ready to quit. God used for a great revival. You like to see a revival in our church? I would. I'd like to see more people come. I don't know about you, but I'd love to see it. I know God can do it. It's not God that's not doing it. It's us. We have to be willing to reach. Step up. Let's all stand together, please. Page 596.